so here we have the HTD Differentials. In the MBX8, it comes with a new revised ring and pinion gear. These use straight cut gears, which really smooth out and make the drivetrain a lot more efficient. As far as building the diffs, it's really pretty simple. I mean, for the most part, you just build it as though the manual goes. One thing that is very critical with the HT diffs is the shims. I'm going to go over a little bit what I do as far as the shimming with my diffs, but one thing to know and understand is that the shimming can vary a little bit from diff to diff just because there's so many parts. So if the tolerance is a little bit different on one diff cup to the next, or a gear, or even the internal gears, you may need to adjust the shimming slightly. Normally, I start by testing the diffs with taking the larger internal shim that goes between the O-ring and the pin, and I move it to the outside of the diff. So you just go ahead and slide that over the out drive before you grease it and put it into the diff cup or the ring gear. As far as the smaller shims go, I like to start with using all of those shims behind the smaller internal gear and just check the mesh. If needed, you can remove those shims, but in most cases, if you move the larger shim to the outside, you'll want to go ahead and use the smaller shim behind the small gears. But again, you just have to kind of check it from diff to diff and make the adjustments accordingly. So now that I have the diffs assembled with the gears, like I said, I went ahead and started with the shims behind the small gears. I'll go ahead and install the gear side and then go ahead and just check the mesh. So I'll go ahead and do this before I put fluid in it, just because if you have to then adjust the shimming, it's not so messy. You can actually take it apart and not waste a bunch of fluid as well. One thing with my diffs, I normally run the Flashpoint aluminum cross pins just to reduce weight. They're actually still very durable and you know, never a problem as far as durability or failure with them. It's just a way to reduce some weight and increase the acceleration. So I'll just go ahead and put all three of these together and then go ahead and secure the screws, and I'll be back in a minute to check and show you the mesh. Okay, so now with all three diffs, we have the ring gears and spur gear secured. Now you'll want to just take and work the diff, and also when you're doing it, check it by pushing in as well as pulling out. And what you want to do is make sure that the mesh is just free and consistent all the way throughout, whether you push in, pull out, or even just spin it by hand. Now, with all three of these diffs, I put the large shim on the outside, so just moved it from between the O-ring and the pin to the outside, and then I used all of the internal small shims, and all of these diffs feel perfect. So that's usually the go-to shimming that I use. But again, if the mesh is a little bit tight, you may want to remove the small shims behind the smaller gears if needed. And pretty much once you check and you figure out the shimming for that gear set and diff cup, as you rebuild your diff, you shouldn't need to like change or adjust the shimming. It should stay pretty consistent. Again, if you change the diff cup, it could vary a little bit, but for the most part, you should be good to go. But this is just something that you want to check, especially when building brand new HT differentials. And this will just make the diffs have a smoother, freer working, which will also help with consistency and traction.